Folks, welcome to another edition of Freedom Hub's Free Market Cash Patient Weekly Webinar. I am Charles Frohman, and my co-host Jeff Cantor is out this week, so I'll do my best to maintain his high standards. We always have great guests, so don't blame them for any mistakes that we happen to cause. We are sponsored by the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, the Disruptors intersection. And if I can go to that site, let's see here real quick. You'll see the website here, mphealthwealthfreedom.com. If you hover over the Home tab and scroll down to webinars, you'll see the guests for today's webinars. We have a 4 o'clock more general liberty webinar where we had former Congresswoman McKinney talk about how idealist politicians get squashed by the swamp. And then on tonight, this is the more health-focused webinar. And it's going to be more tonight about how employers are going to get squashed by the ERISA monster if they don't wash their P's and Q's, as attorney Doug Aldeen is going to discuss. And if you really like tonight's topic, come to this website page and scroll down to continuing the conversation, where you can ask more questions of Doug by clicking here, where you'll be taken to a section with all of our past guests. So no matter who we've had, we continue the conversation on this page. We are sponsored by the WOW Health app that is creating the cash patient market. Forbes featured the plan that Jeff and I sell, the combining sharing and health savings accounts to help the cash patient revolution. And we like to help our guests. Over the couple of years, we've gathered a bunch of action items. So come to the Freedom tab in Fighting for Freedom if you want to help restore health freedom in any of various ways that you'll see here on this page. And you can support some of our friends who have supplied guests over the years. Back to our presentation. So a common theme of our guests is the middleman jacking up the cost and hurting the quality of the patient-doctor relationship, and this cartoon says it all. Doc, can you see the problem? I'm afraid so, says the doc as he looks at the insurance company between the doctor and the patient. Not only do we have a middleman top-heavy cartel problem, but we have a regulatory capture problem that has been on display over the past year's COVID hysteria with the heavy-handed government response and the science-free draconian orders that I think folks are waking up to. And by the way, we have another webinar that I mentioned earlier. Here are the links to get to that. We have 4 channels that you'll see all of our videos up on by the weekend following this Wednesday on BitChute, Variety on YouTube, and Rumble. And this is the website that I've already shown you. And let's go back to that to introduce tonight's guest. And scrolling up here to Mr. Aldeen, you can see the write-up. And as you read that, I'll just tell you, he is an attorney for healthcare plans, the group plans where most folks get their coverage at work. A lot of folks don't know this, and I certainly didn't know this when I was a health staffer in the early 90s, working for Republicans when Hillary tried to shove everyone into an HMO and cap it with Medicare price controls. And that is, most people's insurance plans are not governed by the insurance commissioner in the 50 states. Their plans are governed under a federal law, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, governed by the Labor Department. And that goes for, small plans too, but mostly plans with a couple hundred people on average. And, Doug can tell how that dynamic has changed with the size of employers. He's governed the legal transactions for a lot of acquisitions with the multi-plan company that we use for the network that we include for the freebies that comes with our plan to be compliant with the Affordable Care Act. He's been involved with reference-based pricing, which is all the rage for benefit advisors to tame the annual endlessly increasing costs that employers face. He's dealt with bundled payments, which these great advisors are always pushing. And I think Trump was trying to get some of that payment bundled for the transparency rule. PPOs, which we don't like so much, self-funded plans of all types, TPAs, which we know a lot of, who increasingly have to be innovative to figure out how to save money. He's been involved with Supreme Court cases. He is one of those experts the media asks when they have tough health questions. He's helping a good friend of mine, the RIP, rest in peace, medical debt folks who are raising boku dollars to just wipe out medical debt. It's such a great cause. If you can, Doug, if you can mention something about that later on, people should know about that. It's really a great charity. And on his LinkedIn page, I see in one recent podcast, he was called the Bulldog Attorney Warrior, which I think is great because, you have to be a bulldog if you're going to take on the cartel, which is multifaceted. It's not just the BUCAs, the insurance companies, Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, Humana. It's also the advisory companies, the big ones like Mercer and Aon. These folks have the big employer group model by the throat. And I know the Rosetta type advisors trying to break into that market, other entrepreneurs are cash appointments at. That is one top heavy protected market among so many in the health cartel. So this is going to be an important topic because if you read the health dailies or just benefits in general, you hear about employers getting grief for their 401ks. They're not meeting their ERISA fiduciary responsibilities. They're using 401ks that self-deal. They don't find the best mutual funds for their employees. I've seen some articles that fiduciary standard is going to really nail owners of big companies that aren't being good fiduciaries over their health plan. And that seems to me to be an untapped market of some pretty ferocious litigating. So it would seem to me that now would be a good time for Doug to kind of give us the skinny on that. He's got some background in tough politics as an attorney for the government in Illinois, which is oh so squeaky clean. He's done some other work in San Antonio. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Doug.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Charlie, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss what I think is the tsunami that is slowly but surely, peeping over the horizon. And so when you think about the fiduciary litigation that happened or is an ongoing thing in the 401k world, and you look at ERISA, because ERISA is a health and welfare benefit plans as well. So not just the 401k, but also your health and welfare, your benefits. The dollars are significantly more, and it's a completely, what I would say, opaque, non-transparent, arguably out of control system with a ton of conflicted individuals, organizations just plundering, for lack of a better term. But I want to set the stage by really talking about the market dynamics that are currently in play right now. And we're going to kind of walk through it step by step just to kind of give you an idea in terms of what is really happening in the marketplace and why I think, getting a handle on your healthcare spend to the penny is critical. All right. So if you start with the implementation of the ACA, you have, the MLR rule, which requires insurance plans to pay out 85 cents, or actually it's 80 cents, 80 cents of every dollar they collect. And when you start thinking about the incentives, all right, so if you're a publicly traded insurance company, as an example, or you're administered by a publicly traded insurance company, you're interested in satisfying your shareholders and increasing the size of the pie. And so you'd much rather have 20% of 100 billion rather than 20% of 1 billion. And so what the ACA created was these perverse market incentives where the incentive is to increase the size of the pie. Hospitals charge more, the insurance carriers match the premiums, pass it off to the consumers in the form of high deductible plans, co-insurance, et cetera. And the only people that are really benefiting from the entire Ponzi scheme, for lack of a better term, are the insurance carriers and their shareholders. So the hospitals in particular, they're turbocharging their rates relative to their costs, all right? And what that means is there's a whole line of cases. If in the Medicare world, if you turbocharge your rates relative to your costs, all the bad things happen in life. You go to prison, people pay fines. It's just, but they're tax dollars. And so in the Medicare world, at ratios of 10 to 1, 12 to 1, the government's going to come in, they're going to look at what's been happening. And if your costs have remained flat and you've been turbocharging your rates because you're trying to access the outlier payments, you're going to have some significant problems. But the exact same phenomenon is happening in the commercial sector. And so when you think about the cost shifting that's happening inside these facilities to the commercial market, it's completely unsustainable. And when you can see, and I'll give you an example, like with a Cigna administered plan, you can get a 25% discount off of an already hyperinflated charge master. So if it's 6X Medicare or 8X Medicare, okay, and you're getting a 25% discount, you're still significantly overpaying. And so, I think you got to start with the concept that discounts, they're fictional, they mean nothing. And particularly in today's economic climate, they're fairy dust, means nothing, okay? What's really then starts the advent of reference-based pricing, because as opposed to top-down pricing and taking a discount, because remember, if you let me set the price, I'll give you a 99% discount every single time. But you've got to, I think if you're not doing reference-based pricing or you're not going under the hood looking at what can you really do here to stem this tide, you're already on the other side of that fiduciary line, which is you're not even paying attention, not even trying something, okay? Because reference-based pricing, you're going to pay, it's a defined benefit, you're going to pay a certain percentage of Medicare, and 9 times out of 10, to be honest with you, the hospitals don't even know who these people are. They can't even identify who they are. So you will have some pushback. You will have some, unsavory experiences. But when you look at the savings overall, you can pay those claims and still, significantly be money ahead. So with that as background, hospitals are turbocharging their rates relative to their costs. Add to the mix the transparency regulations that Trump put into place at the end of 2020. So not only do you have the broker transparency rules or the advisor transparency rules, but you also have the health plans and hospitals. So the hospitals are in place now. The health plans are coming online next year, and then the brokers are coming on next year as well. So let's take a step back and look at the brokers. So the last time I counted, there were 17 indirect revenue sources that advisors or brokers can realize without disclosing them to the client. So you can have a direct relationship, benefit design, some consulting, where you're getting a check from the plan and everybody knows exactly what it is. But the real money is those undisclosed revenue streams, TPA referral fees, PBM referral fees, stop loss. The list is endless, 17 of them. And so you might be making $250,000 being helping them design the plan, providing some consulting, but you're making another $1.5 million on the 17 undisclosed revenue streams. It's huge. And that's where the real money is. And so, advisors are now going to have to disclose every single source of revenue greater than $1,000. And the plans are going to have to attest to that, sign a certification, and submit it to the DOL. Yep, we asked our advisor, this is what it is. And so you're creating this net of, well, this is the situation. But you think about how awkward of a conversation that really is. You know, Charlie, as an example, I mean, if you've been paying me $250,000 for the past 10 years and we play golf and we go to lunch, and all of a sudden now I'm telling you, well, it really wasn't $250,000, it was $1.5 million over the past 10 years. I mean, it's an awkward conversation. I mean, and that's just the advisors, okay? And then when you start looking at what the hospitals are doing and the opacity which exists in that market, there was a Wall Street Journal article just a couple of weeks ago, and I worked, her name's Anna Mathers, super nice lady, but the Wall Street Journal hired Google and their best engineers to, quote, crack the pricing code. And they basically said, we want every single hospital, go get all their prices. And the best folks at Google couldn't get into a number of facilities, University of Pennsylvania, New York University, in prestigious academic institutions where there was a code that was implemented in some type of, you know, firewall or however that works to prevent Google and their search engines from going and getting it. I mean, completely intentional acts to prevent this type of information coming out. But, you know, even more to the point, as, you know, a lot of these hospitals start to comply and you start looking at the disparity in prices, tens of thousands of dollars, just take a hip and knee surgery, tens and thousands of dollars. And you could have the hospital omit, for example, IU-Health in Bloomington or in Indianapolis. Anthem's right in their backyard. Who do you think wasn't on their list? Anthem. Why? Because they get paid the most, or the hospital gets paid the most. And there's just different ways you can game the system. So if you're an employer and you're sitting in the Indianapolis market and you've got Anthem, and you realize, wait a minute, I mean, I'm overpaying for these procedures, and that's why my premiums are so high, and I could go with, you know, a different organization, different carrier that would result in significantly lower premiums. I mean, that's a great place to start, and it's low-hanging fruit. It's just information that now is available. Because the reality is this, is that Charlie and I can be standing in a bar. We both order a Stella. They charge him $1,200 and they charge me $5. Same time, same beer, same bar. He just has better insurance coverage. I mean, that's it. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that's going to come into the open, and it's going to be incumbent upon these employers and these advisors to really figure out what in God's green earth is really happening here. And that's just, you know, that's just with that. Then you throw in the plans and what their copays, their deductibles, what they're reimbursing the various providers, and you're creating an ecosphere where it's kind of apparent what everybody is doing with each other, honestly, at the expense of the patients or the members and the employers. I mean, we're just grist for the mill, to be honest with you. Which is why anytime Charlie starts talking about cash pay, I mean, that to me is, you know, what a great deal for the doctors. Get everybody else out from underneath it and, you know, pursue that type of avenue. You know, the other interesting thing with the transparency rules is the effective here at the end of 2021, the gag clauses. In other words, the right to be able to audit the claims, find out all the type of information you need. For example, if you needed to get a stop loss quote, you need a certain amount of information. The Cignas and the Bucas of the world are no longer going to be able to put those types of provisions in their contracts, because the way the rules are written is if you're a plan, you can't work with those carriers. If they have that kind of provision, you are prohibited from working with somebody if that kind of contract provision is in that contract. And so I think that, you know, when you start removing the opacity with pricing, access to claims data, I mean, it is going to open up a hornet's nest of activity, because, I mean, these are huge dollars. Because when you think about an employer it's the second largest spend in their budget after salaries and wages. It's healthcare. So not only are you in the business of maybe manufacturing cars, you're really in the business of healthcare. And if you're a publicly traded company and you're a shareholder and you realize that the CFO has been asleep at the wheel for the past 15 years and it has cost the company millions and millions, maybe billions, depending on the size of the company, in money that just has gone into a cesspool of nothingness and enriched the insurance carriers, which is exactly what it is. It's classic redistribution of wealth. I mean, it's going to be a huge, huge issue. And I can tell you just in terms of different conversations that I've been having with folks across the country. I've got a good friend who does a lot of the PBM litigation for, a lot of the different states and a lot of the different large employers. And the employers, and I'm talking Fortune 500 companies, are waking up and saying, wait a minute, if we're getting ripped off this bad by Express Scripts, okay, in the RX spend, what about the medical spend? And I mean, it's even worse in my humble view. The other thing is, I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I'll open it up for questions. I mean, I think I've kind of gone on long enough here, Charlie. I don't know if there's anybody that has any questions or would like to talk about anything, because the market dynamics are there, and I mean, as these things start to become apparent and obvious and open, sitting back and doing nothing is not the answer. I mean, you're going to have to do something, and you might as well start now. Like, for example, if I had, an organization, I mean, first thing I would ask my advisor, why wait to the end of the year? I'd ask him right now. I mean, why wait? How are you getting paid? What are you getting paid? I value our relationship, but I need to know. I think I saw something here on the chat line here.
Doug, yeah, I'll manage the questions in the chat line for you.
Okay.
I invited everyone to click the raise hand icon to ask their questions. They'll find that icon under the reactions option in the menu, or for some folks, you might find it under more. This is, I think, relatively speaking, a new conversation, Doug. And the reason I say it's kind of new is because even though reference-based pricing has been around for a bit, even though there's on LinkedIn especially, there's a class of mostly large group benefit advisors, the Health Rosetta kind of brand that already are direct contracting, using the right players to give owners a good package, a good plan. All those plans meet the fiduciary things easy. But what I hear, whether it's from like the Nelson Griswolds who presented here, or Carl Schuessler, or Bob Pfeiffer, or other, really good advisors, there's resistance. And it's when these really highly paid company advisors like the Mercer and Aon, who are working with the HR departments and the BUCAs, and they tell the CFOs that Mr. Smith, the CEO, if that was such a good idea, don't you think we would have told you about that? Don't you think we would vet it and we'll bring it to you when it's ripe? And so there really is, probably in the greatest results of lessons of Chicago politicking, a really tightly wrapped network of people in the cartel that are just trying to avoid you, avoiding the ERISA litigation tsunami that's coming. They're putting their heads in the sand. I mean, are the CFOs and CEOs going to be able to use that defense litigation that, their HR departments said it was okay, things were okay with the benefit advisor for Mercer? I mean, is that a legitimate defense? I mean, who's on the hook here for the fiduciary liability? Is it the CFO, the CEO, or who?
Okay, well, think about it. So in every plan document, you're going to have a named fiduciary, okay? Could be the CFO. I mean, every plan document is required to have this. You're going to have a fiduciary. Let's just say, for example, it's the CFO, okay? And then I think the real issue is this, is if there's anybody, I mean, you're going to want to pull your D&O policy, okay? Because what type of insurance coverage is there for this type of action? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not enough. So, and whoever is the fiduciary who's been letting this stuff slide by, okay, year after year after year, particularly when people bring these issues to you and you just ignore it, I mean, it gets to be exceedingly difficult.
Well,
does that answer your question, Charlie?
Yeah, it does. Let's see here. Rob Winings, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, Rob?
Sure, thank you. I had a couple, Doug. First of all, we're in the process of kind of creating a self-insured employer captive, and we're trying to make the decision. Do we just want to be safe and rent a network, and then kind of get away from all that, or do reference-based pricing, which is our preference, because one of our cornerstones of our model is educating consumers on the cost of healthcare. And if you're using based pricing, you can leverage that education opportunity. If you rent a network, it pretty much doesn't matter because the price is going to be what the price is. So with that kind of background, the two questions I have, is reference-based pricing typically 150 to 200% of Medicare? Is that what we're seeing across the board? And secondly, are there any resources out there? Like, for example, is there like a blacklist of the major offenders that if you're going to look at doing insure in a certain market, you want to that market because these guys are just not going to play with you, or you're going to have to take them to court.
Yep. And Rob, I'm going to answer your question because, there's some very good answers you're going to enjoy. Okay. So let's start with the second question. So I have a good friend. Do you know Al Lewis?
No.
Quizify or not? Okay. Al and Dr. Martin McCary and John Hopkins have put together that exact type of list. And I would be happy, if you email me, I would be happy to introduce you to both of them. And I'm sure they could provide you that exact type of list. In other words, what are the health systems out there that are suing? What markets are, where is all this activity happening? And they've put together a map, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And I think you can find some answers that would be very helpful to your endeavor.
That's great. Yeah, no, I'd love to connect.
Okay. And super nice guys and super smart. And then, as to the percentage of Medicare, so here's what I want to tell you, okay? Tying, when you base your reimbursement solely as a percentage of Medicare, you got to remember Medicare reimburses in the aggregate, not on a claim-by-claim basis, okay? And so if you set your level of reimbursement, let's just say, for example, you set it at 140%, okay? It may not cover that particular claim's costs. And I can tell you, having been doing this for a long time, talking to somebody at a hospital and the costs for that particular claim weren't covered is a guaranteed non-starter. It's going nowhere, okay? So what I'm going to suggest is there's a number of different pieces of data that are out there, all right? One of which is called the Medicare Payment to Cost Report. And what that's going to show is at what percentage of Medicare is going to cover what percentage of their costs. Deaconess Hospital in Evansville, Indiana, 138% of Medicare covers 150% of their costs. So to me, if I was in a reference-based pricing product and I was in that market, I'd set my level of reimbursement at 150% of Medicare, because you know what's going to happen is the hospital is going to take the check and not even think about it, because they've been paid more than enough. And it's not worth it when you think about the return on investment and everything else like that to go chase, you or me or Charlie for the $188. It's just not worth it. And so I think that, if you...
What was that? What was that? You said there was
it's called the
base of this
Medicare.
Yeah.
I'm happy to send it to you. I've got a client here in Austin that we reprice medical bills in the event that there's a car accident. So we represent the State Farms and the Allstates of the world, okay? And that's that's the information that we use, because the hospitals typically in Texas will file a lien, and they're only entitled to recoup the reasonable value of those services. So I guarantee it's not the charge master rate, but when you're negotiating with these facilities, you can actually have a starting point. Listen, here's where the information you submit under oath to CMS when they base their pricing, this is what you provide them. If you're getting paid 138% of Medicare, it's covering 150% of the cost. That's a 12% margin. Lots of businesses would love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can start there. Okay. That's to me, that's the first step in an honest, true conversation. We know exactly what your financials provide. Happy to pay you a very fair level of reimbursement. But I think if you had that information, then you could strategically set that level of reimbursement. And I just don't want to arbitrarily say 150 or 160 because depending on, it's very hospital specific, geographic specific. If you're in Southern California, very expensive market. If you're in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, that might be the most expensive market in the U.S. I mean,
are there any? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to say.
Set your reimbursement. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. We got a little delay, so I apologize for that. My other question was, do you know, are there some statistics that are showing, like the percentage of claims that are moving towards reimbursement? Is that a trend that's increasing significantly, let's say, over the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, I represent the Health Rosetta, and they've probably got 285 advisors now, maybe 5 million lives under their belt. And I can tell you that with that group, reference-based pricing is, it's like the Spanish flu. It's just a lot of people are doing it.
Okay.
I just don't know what those numbers would be, but I'd be happy to put you in touch with either Dave or Sean, and I'm sure they would know exactly, what that trend looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I just, we're just trying to collect some data here and make some decisions about which way we want to go, and we certainly want to go reference. My general feeling is this: is that if you go reference-based pricing, you're probably going to save money across the board, except for the occasional health system that wants to give you 6 to 8 times Medicare and they're not budging, right? So now you have to weigh all your claims at a good rate versus the handful that are going to pay you lousy, and the economics of that are, which do you go safe and just buy a network, or do you go reference based and then put an aggressive strategy in place to sue or whatever you're going to do to the guys who are nasty?
Yeah, well, I think if you hedge your bets, okay, and I'm going to give you my honest assessment. I am a no network guy, so I'm going to tell you right up front, I don't believe in them. I think they're a complete ripoff, and you're paying for something that to me is a fiction. And in theory, even having a network, balance billing occurs more in a network situation than it does in a reference-based pricing arrangement. That's a fact, okay? Now, having said that, okay, I think if you really look at what that hospital's financials provide, you look at what their Medicare payment to cost rate is, you set your level of reimbursement strategically, 10 points over it, whatever it may be, okay? Because reference-based pricing really it's an inability of a hospital to identify who these people are. So you have exponentially increased your odds by really being strategic and setting that level of reimbursement where it's not even worth their time to chase, you or me around, okay? It's just not. And if they can't identify you, why would you want to pay a premium? Because, ultimately in a network situation, there's going to be a ton of balance billing. And whether it's because you had to pass off, in terms of coinsurance, copays, et cetera, and you're paying a premium for it. And I don't subscribe to the BUCA saying, well, it's balance billing protection, because it's really not. And the real deal is if you're not implementing something from the bottom up, I think you're doing, your client and the plan a disservice. That's my honest view.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Doug, Charlie here. Just a couple things. I know with the cash appointments app that Dr. Arshad's WOW app is pursuing is not so much reference-based pricing as it is that gas station dynamic where if we eventually get everyone to disclose an upfront bundled price for whatever, you'll stimulate comparative shopping and dumb down those prices the good old fashioned way where they're all listed and you have that kind
Yeah.
of new dynamic. It doesn't exist really right now, but that's sort of the long-term vision that we have with that thing. Um, Secondly, you're the rep of the Rosetta Group. Doug, I didn't know that. That's impressive. That's good
Well, thank you.
company. And Dr. McCary, he certainly gets around a lot. He's a big name
He
at
does.
Hopkins. I didn't know he was an expert in this area as well. That's good to know. So,
Yeah, well,
Dr.
he's very, honestly, Dr. McCary is, I mean, he's one of those guys, not only do you have a Hippocratic oath in terms of, making sure somebody is healthy to do no harm, but it's also financial health as well. And I think that's a great point.
Exactly. Dr. Testa, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. Hey, Doug. I know we've crossed paths on LinkedIn before and maybe at the Rosetta conference. This is a great conversation. I've been bringing this up frequently and not really getting any answers. I mean, I've been in healthcare a long time. I've been poking the bear with brokers and consultants should also do no harm because they are doing harm, right? As you know, as everyone knows. What responsibility does an employer have for putting a plan in place? One, now this is going to be a packed question. One, where people can't afford to go get care, so they're getting sicker. So number one.
Yep.
Number two, they're letting them go to a poor quality network to really get, overutilization of all kinds of things that are, perversely incentive on the physician side of things. And so and overpaying, right? So these seem like all fiduciary issues. Like what role does the broker play and the employer play, and why is this going so unpoliced or penalized? What can we do here? I mean, what can someone do other than you and me and the people on this Zoom call knowing this, but no one really seeming to care on the other side?
So, just in terms of, you think about all the downstream effect of not managing this responsibility as you should. So, the financial component obviously is huge, but then you start thinking about the downstream effect, which is the health and welfare of these people. Okay. It's a travesty, unbelievable travesty, and what can be done about it? I mean, the minute you have free market economics creeping into the system, okay, the change is so slow. And as you know, healthcare is what, 20% of the GDP, if not more. And it's a slow turn. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah, everything in healthcare is so slow. Go from the bench scientist who discovers something and 17 years later, literally, it gets implemented at the clinic. So yeah, I'm aware everything moves slow, but my God, I'm going to continue to poke the bear because this is such a egregious ripoff. If somebody was doing that with your 401k money, it's a total ripoff.
A complete ripoff. And I honestly, I have a lot of doctor friends, and it's the doctors that are bearing the brunt of it. Look at physician burnout, and to me, it's a travesty.
Yeah, I think that somehow, and who knows how it's going to ever happen, actually, but I'm a chiropractor and an acupuncturist, so I've been pushing this rock uphill against the system forever, but it doesn't intimidate me. I just got my broker's license because I want to make an impact. This is just ridiculous, and I'm going to be the squeaky wheel like I was in practice. And
Eric Bricker, Dr. Eric Bricker, or no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know him well, and I love what he's putting out there and sharing and teaching us.
Great.
All.
Well, he just got his broker's license. I don't know if you knew that.
I know. Yes,
okay.
I did. Yeah. And so, when I was in practice, we knew the crappy doctors. We never referred to them. They overutilized. They had poor quality outcomes. Surgeons, spine guys, whatever. It seems that this information is, the people at Rosetta and stuff that share, who is it that does the reference-based pricing? They showed me their database of quality and cost, and I was like, holy cow. I mean, like, everybody really needs to see that. And, some brave brokers need to just step up. But, it's a big system. It's the Titanic. The ship's not going to turn very fast. Maybe it'll sink before it turns. But yeah, so I think you've answered the question. It is all fiduciary illegalities of what's going on: overpricing, overcharging benefits, costs out of control to the consumer that can't afford to pay them with 60-70%
conflict
of
of interest all around. I mean, conflict of interest. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, think about it this way. I mean, any other profession, okay, lawyer profession. I mean, if I represented two people in a criminal proceeding as an example that, were adverse, I mean, it's a 30-second conversation with the Illinois State Bar Association. Here's my license. I mean, that's it. And there's just nothing else to say. I mean, but it's just not that way in the advisor broker world at all.
No. All right. Well, thanks for doing this. Hopefully we'll meet one day. Yeah.
Doug, do you mind if I put your...
Me for interrupting. My name's Massey Meredith. I'm in business development with 4C Health Solutions.
Hey, Massey, how are you? Good. How are you?
Good. So we connected on LinkedIn, maybe a couple of years ago, but
yeah.
I have known about you and your work for a long time. I don't need to tell you the kind of frustrations that we have had when we're calling on, like, the minimum account size we can call on is like 10,000 covered lives and above. So
yeah,
that, I think you understand that. I mean, some of our guys, I mean, you know exactly what we do. So my question is, when do you think we're going to be able to break through the ice we know HR is conflicted. We know that the HR benefit consultants are conflicted. I don't need to name the names. We all know who Mercer and Aon and Marsh are. When are the CEO and the CFO of these large companies, both public and private, going to do the hard work and take over from their HR directors on their second largest health spend? Because at this point, the conversations we've had with these people is, the cartel is at work. We know that somebody has come in behind us and told them certain things that are not true about their health plan, that after we explained everything that they needed to know, as that you just addressed. So
yeah.
When is it going to happen? Because this is the biggest fraud in the history of this country that nobody is really talking about.
And Massey, I mean, I would agree with you 100%. To me, this has been the largest redistribution of wealth this country has ever seen. I mean, it really has. And, you look at the stock price of all the publicly traded companies. I mean, the whole thing has been the biggest sham on the, just as an example, I have no problem with people making lots of money, none. But if you look, just yesterday, Business Insider put out the CEO salaries for like Cigna, United, Aetna. Cigna and United, those guys were making $79 and $81 million. And I looked up LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Tom Brady's salaries. They dwarf them. I was just like,
I know,
how
but
can that be?
Doug, with the few minutes that I have with you, I want to ask you, when are we going to be able to wake up the C-suite to the tremendous
I think it's happening right now.
They have
I think
that they're not even
happening.
recognizing? No, because Rosetta is only they're handling the smaller accounts. I'm sorry. I'm talking about the biggest and best run companies in America are completely unaware of this problem.
Yeah. I think it's happening now. And I think COVID accelerated all of this. And I can just tell you, just having talked to a lot of my different lawyer friends at some of the bigger firms up in Chicago, I can tell you for a fact there's a lot of conversations that are happening. Just because, I mean, when you think about what COVID has done, think about this. Your job as a CFO coming out of COVID is preservation of P&L, all right? And what is the biggest piece of low-hanging fruit you can do is healthcare. And I can tell you those conversations are being had right now. And it's just a matter of, you know, getting organized, getting things like how we're going to manage this. But I mean, I can tell you the conversations are being had because I participated in one.
Well, I'll just tell you, every CFO or CEO we talk to, they don't understand the space at all. And what do? They go, well, let me bring my HR director in. And
yeah, that's a kiss of death.
They'll be very interested in hearing this. And we already know they're conflicted. So I don't think it's changing, in all honesty. I mean, look, I've talked to a lot of them. And no, there's an inherent, just complete misunderstanding of this whole issue. They have no idea what they're dealing with. And because they don't understand it, they're not even attempting to.
Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts on that. Thank you. That was a very good presentation tonight.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Doug, Massey's a good friend there in Richmond. We've had great conversations with Rosetta Brokers how to break through that HR barrier. I'm glad to hear that your white shoe law firm friends are saying they're starting to pay attention to it post-COVID. I wanted to ask you as we wrap up here, give me a vision, a picture here of the ERISA fiduciary lawsuit as it confronts the CFO that Massey is bumping his head against, going, oh no, I am in trouble. What does that experience look like? Who's initiating it? You know, give me the details. How's that work?
You know, I think it comes from, I think it's going to start in the publicly traded companies. And I think it's going to come from shareholders, activist shareholders. And, you know, once people get a handle on what's really been going on in the sizable amount of dollars, that's where I think it starts. Now, what does that look like? Because, I mean, think about it. I mean, you're going to have a lawsuit, shareholder activist X against, I don't know, Caterpillar. And then Caterpillar is going to bring in everybody else, the advisors, Aon, Mercer, you know, and it's just going to be finger pointing. It's going to be a massive undertaking. But I think it starts with something like that. I mean, because when you think about, you know, the dollars are significant. You're going to have, you know, top-notch lawyers, you know, from Chicago, New York, getting after it. And I think that's where it starts. Can you still hear me, Charlie?
Sorry. What kind of fines and jail? What is the risk of paying here for these people?
You know, you know, it depends on, you know, because you think about this. You've got a core fiduciary duty to manage plan assets. Okay, clearly that hasn't been happening. Now, what does that damage model look like? I mean, how far back can you go? What's the statute of limitations? Is it 5 years, 6 years? I mean, I have no idea. So, how far back can you go? And if you're using a but-for damage model, I mean, I don't even, you'd have to hire, you know, Milton Friedman just to come up with how much money are we talking about? And then who's going to pay it? Because, you know, you're going to have D&O coverage, which is going to be inadequate if it even exists for this type of thing, or they even have it. It does exist, but if they have it, it's going to be inadequate. And then you're going to be finger pointing, and you're going to try to bring in everybody else to, you know, try to make it whole. It's going to be unbelievably, you know, messy.
And you heard it here first. Doug, fantastic. This is amazing. And we have so many mutual friends that want something like this to happen because we have the great Rosetta Brokers. We have the data miners like Massey and, you know, the integrated disruptors like Dr. Testa and Dr. McCary and all these, you know, Bill Hennessy with RFP. reference-based pricing, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we've got
Exactly.
the Army.
Well,
Go ahead.
Oh, it's there, without a doubt. It is. And, and there's a ton of people, because once you start getting, one of the big things has been getting access to the claims data. So Cigna takes the position. So even though you're the self-funded plan, you're paying Cigna to administer their account, they take the position that you can access the data under certain parameters, but we own it. And, they've got your claims data. You're looking to get an ad quote from a stop-loss carrier, and they're looking for data, and you can't get it. How can that even be? But I think once you've got this ecosphere of claims data, some transparency with pricing, it just is going to be a jaw dropper.
Amazing. Got time for one final question. If anyone wants to unmute themselves, just blurt it out. And awaiting that, Doug, why don't you tell folks how to reach you? I did put your email in the chat.
Yep. So please reach out to me. And I know, Rob, if you want to, I'm happy to connect you with Al and those guys, but it's doug@health-attorney.net. And happy to help you in any way.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks very much, Doug.
Thank you.